Women's penis size preferences are a bit of an emotional roller coaster, I think, for the men listening.
Hi, and welcome to, or back to, my channel where I offer my thoughts and opinions about whatever catches my attention. I'm Kit, and, well, someone asked me to keep doing Chris Williamson videos, and as a female, I'm very agreeable. Jordan Peterson said so it must be true. And so here we are. Shortly after my Chris Williamson Has Weird Ideas About Women video was published, he posted a video with Macken Murphy, originally titled What Women Actually Want, with a matching thumbnail, and now, for some reason, titled The Brutal Truth About Female Attraction, with a thumbnail, Size Matters. We are in for it today, and personally, as a female, I'm very excited to find out what attracts me. And we're starting off strong, and yes, if I had to suffer, so do you.
Penis size preferences. What's happening?
Are we talking about women's penis size preferences?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so slightly far afield of my expertise now.
Yeah.
Okay, so women's penis size preferences are a bit of an emotional roller coaster, I think, for the men listening, because when I have the experience of presenting on this topic, what I see is kind of a crescendo of, oh, that sounds really good, to realizing it's not as good as it sounds. So the best study on this subject comes from Prouse and colleagues. And what they looked at was women interacting with real 3D models of various, penis-shaped objects, cylinders, essentially, and had them pick and choose which one they actually favored. And the reason that this study design is more powerful than just asking women, what size do you prefer? The reason that this is powerful is because it gets around issues of misreporting due to not knowing how big or small a given size is.
How many times has someone said, I think it's about 6 inches from the left, isn't it? When you're trying to put a picture up or something,
exactly.
You have no idea how big 6 inches is.
And when we're dealing with things that, are all things considered on the scale of like couches and cars and things relatively small, an inch off, that's 20 to 15% off.
Also, they're not judging their penis preference based on how big it is to look at, which is what you would be doing, or in terms of memory, you would be doing it based on feel.
Right, exactly. So that's a really good point. So in terms of, you can ask women on a pen and paper survey, like, what size do you prefer? But even if you get like a really consistent answer of like 7 inches, you still don't know that they know what 7 inches actually is, right? And there's actually good reason to suspect, because men, overreport their own penis size, and that likely causes some kind of mass confusion as to what size.
You think we've got penis inflation effect?
Yeah, exactly, where it's like men are saying that they're a certain size, and so women are maybe learning about sizes through that.
Oh, he was 7 inches.
Yeah, exactly, and then that's coded. So unlabeled 3D models, I would say that's the gold standard if you actually want to learn what size is preferred. And the size.
What were they doing with them?
just interacting with them, just going in and picking. And in terms of length, it was 6.3 inches for a long-term relationship, 6.4 inches for a short-term relationship. So that's, if I'm correct, maybe 16 to 16.25 centimeters. And then in terms of circumference, 4.8 inches for long-term, 5 inches around for short-term, which is somewhere on the order of 12.2 to 12.7 centimeters.
I can't believe this is a serious discussion. Yes, researchers are gonna research, but out in the real world, who cares? If you don't have the preferred penis size, I am so glad my housemate isn't home. 1, what are you going to do about it? The answer is nothing, so what good is that knowledge going to do for you? And 2, I promise you, a woman isn't going to refuse to date you because you're not 6.3 or 6.4 inches. How someone treats me is way more important than their size, and I would be willing to bet that 99.99% of women agree. And if you're wondering how this can be an emotional roller coaster for men, I hope the 20% of my male audience also has their emotional support pencils. Macken says it's because most men overestimate their size and the average isn't even 6 inches, so men are out there thinking they meet that preference when they actually don't. And then nothing happens because 5 inches is also fine, and most women don't have orgasms from vaginal sex anyway. This would have been a great video to have Blessa as a sponsor. Anyway, they're missing the forest for the trees. Be a good person and an attentive lover, and you'll likely be fine.
I would be interested to see the bell curve of how satisfied would you be, as in, I guess that the, talking about fat tails when we're discussing this as a fraught, I'm going to guess that being a little bit under, or even like maybe a standard deviation under versus a standard deviation over, there is an upper bound. Like on one, you're talking about less pleasure. On the other, you're talking about pain. Any woman who's ever had her cervix hit knows, like, that's not fun.
And on that note, I do find it strange that two straight men are talking about women's penis preferences. If you simply must discuss this, wouldn't it be more beneficial to do so with those that actually have experience with this topic? But anyway, men prefer shredded men, women prefer dad bods, men think women lie about that, and I agree with Macken that women do indeed prefer dad bods. As for the why, well, if you know, you know, and if you don't, I won't be the one to tell you. And no, it has nothing to do with who would win in a fight. But it is very cute watching Chris and Macken trying to rationalize this. Though it did occur to me that they're giving men tips to look good, but not how to be a good partner. I promise you, 99.99% of women don't care about a man's body fat percentage. In fact, I'd be surprised if that was ever... I have never thought about a man's body fat percentage. Am I supposed to? Anyway, to answer one of Chris's questions...
Women assume that what they find attractive in a partner is what they will sleep with. Will they?
No, because a man who fits my physical preferences could be someone I have no spark with, or they could be a shitty person. Chris seems to forget that looks aren't all that matters, as he declares.
The David Putt study suggests women don't actually know what they want to have sex with fully.
Sorry, bros. It's not enough to look good and you'll get laid. That's not women not knowing what they want. It's that life and sex are way more complicated than, oh, he's hot.
I do a lot of these on TikTok. It's a very TikTok-y thing to do. They do tend to go viral, where I'll just play generally a woman's rap song and just listen to it and react, you know, from an Evo Psych perspective. And it's a really useful teaching tool, frankly. And it's a very useful teaching tool for my area of specific interest and expertise. It's really good for mate preferences.
So Macken does have an actual degree, and he's using women's rap songs as a teaching tool for mate preferences? And he doesn't see anything really unscientific about that. I'm no researcher or anything, but even I can see the issue with taking not just performers, but female rappers to examine the mate preferences of women. Note, there are 4 billion women in the world.
Because you see that in a lot of types of music, people are very coy about their mate preferences, right? Like, they don't necessarily state them, and if they do state them, they don't state them accurately. But then you listen to rap music, and you just get very accurate stated preferences where it's like, yeah, I know the study. Like, I'm listening to it. I'm hyped. I'm like, I know the studies. I know that that's accurate. Like, that's true.
So Macken knows the studies, and that's how he knows rappers are being honest and everyone else is just being coy. Wow. Much science. So much science. Let's do some more.
The average body count based on CDC data, median, and excluding virgins from the data set, they put out 4 for women and 6 for men, about. Now, the reason for the discrepancy could be due to it could be due to a variety of factors. It could be as simple. There's so many statistical potential explanations for it, but it could just be as simple as men overreport and women underreport, right?
One of his theories, or at least not one he chose to share in this video, is not that women have to consider the risk of violence, STIs, and pregnancy before sleeping with someone. And yes, men can get STIs as well, but they have more serious consequences for women. Following this, there is a lengthy discussion about the women they're most concerned about, beautiful women with high-earning, high-power careers, and how they date, and then they, seemingly randomly, switch over to discussing non-monogamy. Chris apparently sent Macken a voice note about this, and I'm curious as to why, but anyway, full disclosure, I do polyamory, and no, that doesn't mean I think everybody should.
I was thinking about the prospect of a man and a woman entering non-monogamy and what the benefits are and what the costs are. So the unique thing that I haven't heard anyone talk about before is that there are greater benefits for men because on average men have more variety in their sexual fantasies across any single sexual fantasy. If you ask a man how many partners he wants throughout his life, etc., it tends to be higher. And do men have higher sociosexuality? Is that a way that you would be able to say it?
Oh, yeah.
Right, okay. But that would be...
It's one of the most replicable findings in all of psychology.
Okay, so men are more sociosexual than women. They want more sexual partners, and they're more open to casual sex too, which is typically what non-monogamy has, at least in part. But they're also more subject to dissatisfaction at the thought that their partner is getting physically intimate with another person, specifically another man.
Has Chris ever actually talked to a man in a non-monogamous relationship? I'm getting the impression that his idea here has come from how he would feel in that situation.
There are greater benefits, but there are greater costs, and both are paid by the man.
And how was Chris figuring that? Because he assumes men will be more jealous?
If there was such a thing as emotional non-monogamy, not sexual non-monogamy, emotional non-monogamy. So for the guys that are listening, imagine the relationship that you're in, potentially. You get to sleep around, but you have to deal with your missus sleeping around. How much, hey, do you get from getting to sprayed about a bit versus how much, do you have by the thought that she's being sprayed at a bit? Now, the inverse would be, and it's typically different ways that you can set up non-monogamy, but a lot of them are physically you can be intimate, emotionally we are monogamous. Like that's one relatively common setup.
I don't know how common it is, and I'm curious about where Chris got that idea from, but, well, on one hand, as anyone who's been doing this for longer than a few months will know that that's an impossible request. You can't control feelings. And on the other, well, if I hear we can have sex but no emotions, I will quietly remove myself from that situation because, to me, that is the request of someone who really doesn't want to be doing non-monogamy, or is very new to it and doesn't quite realize the implications of opening up a relationship.
Imagine the inverse. Imagine physically we can be monogamous, but emotionally we are allowed to spray it about. Now, I would suggest that in those situations, women would feel very uncomfortable with it. That's not for me to say that women don't already feel very uncomfortable with the non-monogamy thing.
If a woman, or anyone, is uncomfortable with non-monogamy, but their partner forges full steam ahead anyway, they should end things with that person.
But I think that's because they don't derive the same benefits that men do, not because they pay higher costs. As in, they're not going to find it quite as painful. They're still going to find it very painful, especially if you're not agreeing to this, if you've been fucking conned, coerced, persuaded into doing this thing.
Why do I have a feeling that Chris thinks women would never enter non-monogamous relationships of their own accord? It is possible, I promise.
But the pretty replicable study of, as a man, imagine your woman sleeping with another man but not being emotionally intimate, or being emotionally intimate with another man and not sleeping with him, and for the woman imagine the same. And men typically say, well, I'd rather that she said she loved him but didn't fuck him. And for women, they said, well, I'd rather that he fucked her but didn't say that he loved her.
I don't know what he's referencing, and of course Chris doesn't link sources, but you can't ask monogamous people those questions and assume non-monogamous people would agree. As a non-monogamous person, I fully expect my partners to love and have sex with other people. It's kind of, expected. Chris does know that people actively choose these relationships, right? It doesn't just randomly happen. I didn't wake up one day and find myself dating multiple people.
At least that's one of the... And when you combine these two worlds together, I thought, there seems to be something interesting there. So, what do you reckon?
I'm sorry, I just have to giggle a bit about how Chris rambles off his theories of, I don't even know the pros and cons of non-monogamy for men, and then basically tells Macken to make sense of his theories.
Well, I think there definitely is something interesting. And I think what's interesting, I'm going to agree with everything you've said and just add the ultimate lens. So this is all quite proximate. It's about the feelings. But the asymmetry in feelings is also reflecting an asymmetry in costs and benefits at the evolutionary level. So while a man can have multiple women who are pregnant by him at one time, a woman can only be pregnant by one man at a time.
Have they considered everything isn't about procreating?
And so there's a much more powerful evolutionary benefit to sexual variety, as you're well aware of.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's also a greater risk of cuckoldry, right? There's no chance of a woman accidentally raising a child that is not hers, right? That's just not the sort of...
No woman has ever given birth to a child that wasn't hers.
Yeah, exactly. And that's not something that's occasioned by Well, I mean, I guess technically with modern technology, but it's not something that's occasioned by infidelity.
And the answer is no. They have not considered everything isn't about procreating.
So there's an asymmetry at the evolutionary level that buttresses this asymmetry at the proximate level. And it's interesting. I mean, what I've been trying to get my head around since that voice note that I'd actually like to hear your opinion on is, given both the proximate and the ultimate levels, what sort of man would we expect to benefit most from true non-monogamy? And what sort of women would we expect to benefit most? My intuition on the women's side would be, highly committed partner who doesn't have the conventional cues to physical attractiveness that can get passed on. But I wanted to...
Hang on. So explain that for me. You think that the woman would be in a relationship with a guy that is non-typical in terms of attractiveness?
I would say that which women would benefit most from non-monogamy, which men would benefit most from non-monogamy.
Okay.
I'm imagining that a woman who is dating a man who is very committed, handles the kind of supportive side of things.
Cinnamon roll husband.
Yeah, but is providing paternal benefits, but not
genetic.
Yeah, conceptive benefits.
I really don't think either of them have ever spoken with a non-monogamous person. At least in my experience, the highly committed couples living together, sharing finances, maybe even married, are the ones that have kids. But anyway.
Oh, that's interesting.
That's one angle.
What a wonderful archetype. I love how once I get you 3 hours into a podcast, you start to get much more spicy. That's much more, the fucking academic hat comes off.
At least he admits it's not about academics.
It's certainly the point of offsetting the risk of cuckoldry by cuckolding other people, which is basically what men are doing in this situation.
Yeah, exactly.
Is like a very meritocratic approach.
Does Chris know what that word means? Because it seems like he doesn't.
And that's what happens among some in some anthropology studies. This is the mainstream explanation for what's going on, where you look at...
You fuck my wife, I fuck yours, and her friend.
Not sure where the friend comes in, but you have sex with my wife, I'll have sex with yours is swinging, which is a different form of non-monogamy. Actually, I can tell they don't know what they're talking about because they didn't define terms, and I would be willing to bet that's because they don't know there are differences between swinging and non-monogamy, and then even differences within non-monogamy.
I'm just going to be, I don't want to get too spicy too deep into the podcast, but I have not had the experience of meeting polyamorous males and being like, these guys are super Chad, handsome.
Well, Macken just popped out with polyamorous, so maybe they do know there are differences. And they don't care. Very scientific.
I guess you're just selecting that you've got to account for the selection effect of just high sociosexuality and wants to do this.
Right. I mean, I'm agreeing with you in principle that you'd think the people who'd be most enthusiastic about polyamory
are the ones that can extract the most from the cuckoldry system without paying them.
Benefit from a culture of polyamory.
Yes.
But you know what? Actually, I'm gonna dial back here, actually. Because we're talking about polyamory, capital P, flying the flag, wearing the label, and saying, I'm polyamorous.
Not just slinging it about.
But if we think about what polyamory actually is, it's just multiple mating and kind of this informal hierarchy of some variety. And when I think about it without the label,
it actually is situationship.
Yeah, it is. That is what very handsome men are doing.
Yeah.
So I think that the people that were kind of thinking, the people who would extract the most benefit from situationships are probably hot guys.
As soon as you get outside of San Francisco, the rules of this change.
Yeah, and it's like those guys would extract the most benefit, and then those guys do seem to be situationshipping up.
I bet they would both be shocked to find out that there are polyamorous people in relationships that don't involve sex, that relationships don't have to be hierarchical, that you can have multiple relationships and have them not be situationships. Because what is a situationship? The whole point is that it's undefined and uncommitted. And of course you can have multiple situationships, but polyamory is about building relationships.
Bro, I think it's so great. You had this lovely line in our WhatsApp chat. Getting cuckolded is true disaster mode for a male, whereas for a female, technically your long-term mate could be out and about without too much going wrong for you.
The way these two speak is really weird. They're acting as though non-monogamous people haven't thought about things and aren't even really there of their own free will. Has it occurred to them that the nuclear family has never been right for everyone and that different people want different things? But honestly, I find Chris to be very irresponsible with his content. He is fostering a paranoia and disdain toward women. Oh, women are just shallow, superficial creatures. They aren't fully actualized humans. They just act off hormones and instinct. You don't have to be a good or interesting person to get one of these creatures. Just make sure your dick is the appropriate size, and she won't care if you have the emotional intelligence of a Q-tip. And that is what content like so-called modern wisdom is about. Quietly reinforcing patriarchy under the guise of, this has never been thought of before. And that's it for this video. I hope your emotional support pencils, or whatever you chose, served you well. My socials and Patreon are linked below, along with sources and resources. I would like to thank everyone for watching through to the end, and of course, I would like to give extra thanks to my patrons. Have a wonderful day, take a walk if you can do so without getting frostbite, and I'll see you in the next one.